do. My name is Jeffrey Tay. I'll be the host today. I do have to apologize. Like all webinar, we sometimes do have lag or lagging in the internet space, so that things that is delayed, please do accept my apology. So we're just gonna go to introduce our speaker first. Some of you may already have heard, listened to what they just say. Some of it you may just join. So welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is all about endpoint security and network resilience. There are three things we want to talk about, which is how to secure the dynamic enterprise attack surface, and how to prevent loss of sensitive data. And last but not least, how to maintain compliance, especially with data privacy rule in the Philippines. Is actually quite stringent itself. Now, together we have a panelist. Let's just basically go to our most respected and experienced IT security and infrastructure lady, I'll call it, Charmaine Valmonte, represent the Aboitiz group of company. And if you basically research her, you can see that, you know, her experience. Charmaine, I believe that you also work for US Army as well. Am I correct before that? Or
yes,
I'm wrong?
I retired as a from the U.S. Army. I'm a communicator actually in the G6, so that was my baseline. Did that for 21 years, and then moved into the natural progression of information security and IT security as a civilian.
I understand that. Yeah, you spent almost 30 years of your career in security in one way or the other, but still within the IT security space. Now we have Lieutenant, and she's the Information Security Officer, also Chief Implementer for the NEP COVID-19 Armed Forces of the Philippines. We have Christine Margaret Lopez, Threat Detection and Response Lead for ASEAN Financial Services, primarily only look after financial services in the Philippine Global Delivery Services, with one of the big four multinational consulting firm. I'm not going to name name. You can research her. Sorry, I just have to make you work. Last but not least, we have Chin Peng here that represent Fortinet. Now, Chin Peng and me, we basically probably, Chin, how many webinars have we done? 4, 5? Roughly that amount? Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. So Chin Peng heads up the business development for Fortinet. And like I say, today, the reason we partner with Fortinet is because we want to help IT security professional combat some of the endpoint security issue where a lot of country that we go to do this webinar, one thing we found that a lot of employee, they're not really behaving themselves when it comes to cyber discipline. So they'll still click on malicious link. They will still place on apps or anything like that, okay? I think what we're trying to do is act like a parent. So it's just basically put a device that block all this thing go away. I believe Chin Peng, you are going to walk us through later. Now, I'm going to ask my colleague, JR, do you want to basically just say what I just say in Tagalog? Or because I feel I have to respect the Manila market as well, or Philippine market.
Thank you, Jeff. So, papakilala ko ulit sa mga medyo late nag-login. Ako si JR, based sa Manila with the Inoxel Take Group. So kami nag-host ng cyberattack. I think I've already met a few of you before from the participants and the attendees. So hi ulit, kamusta, and magandang hapon. Itong session na to, all in all, should be about 45 to 60 minutes. Tapos open discussion. Pwede po kayong magtanong sa chat box kung meron kayong mga gustong ipaulit na focus areas or kung yung mga tanong kayo, and try po namin sagutin habang may session. So, so back to Jeff.
Thank you, JR. So first question for Chin Peng, and I'm gonna do a chronon here. I'm gonna call you CP because you keep asking me to call you CP. Okay, and the question is for CP and Charmaine. How to protect enterprise network through attack surface expansion, and that's basically the thing, right? With these questions, you know, may seem simple, but how do we control our endpoint in a current environment? Device connected to the internet can now be a target of cyber attack. Let's just go for Charmaine first. Shall we?
Oh, one of the things that brought about this is, interestingly, we were in the middle of upgrading our endpoint protection facility. Where it used to be signature based, behavior based, but we moved that to an endpoint detection and response um, facility, so that if you were outside of the network, the building, you're still protected, right? So we were about 25% complete when COVID happened, and so that slowed us down a bit in terms of installing on endpoints. But this is the tall order from the from the boss, actually, was that it's you had to put the guard at the gate, and if you didn't have an ID, you couldn't get in. And so we really worked on, if a device is not compliant, or compliance of a device, and being able to act quickly and shut it down if there is an incident. We don't want to be preventive. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive. And we had to put the protection on the device itself, and the ability for us to be able to do that if they were in the network or outside of the network. So I'm happy to say we're at 97% complete now of that particular project. So that's what we kind of went through in terms of endpoint protection.
All right, you still have 3% left.
Yeah,
Okay.
that 3% are those ones that got stuck in the office, and they're just not using those systems. So
Right, okay.
yeah.
I mean, it's always hard to balance, right? I mean, Chimping, CP, you always work with, you work with a lot of clients, and I think a client like Charmaine is no exception. And how do you balance that? And most importantly, like the questions say, how to protect enterprise network through attack surface. When all the devices are connected to internet, it's now basically subject to target as a cyber attack. So how do we protect our employee, our organization?
Yeah, I think Charmaine has covered a very big part of it, and I would say the approach that you're taking is, well, I would say right, in the sense that we want to be proactive rather than reactive on it. Charmaine mentioned a few things about detection and response, and that is true. That's more from, I would say, coming from a process point of view, right? But we need to put in the technologies to enable these kind of processes. So
Right.
let's take it from first principles, right? Let's say somebody is at home, or even in the office, you're going to plug in something into the network. The network being your LAN, or at home, you're trying to establish connection back to the office through a VPN. So what's the first thing we're going to do? Make sure that the device itself is compliant. Compliance in what sense? You know, what OS you use, what kind of, do you have an antivirus? Is it up to date? You know, are you running certain software that it's not allowed? So if you've passed all the checks, then you're allowed in. Hey, come on, you're in. But we know once you're connected, it doesn't guarantee that you are safe throughout that part. Right? So that's where the endpoint protection or the EDRs come in, and even that proactive continuous checks on the security posture of your end device. I'll just take one example, right? Maybe you're not supposed to run a certain application, be it some gaming application, you know, but so at the point of entry, you're not doing it, but down 1 hour later, you're tired, you want to turn on something to play, you open that application. So as network security, are you going to allow this person to continue to be on your network? I think that's a question that we want to answer, right? And if you do not allow, then how do you proactively then remove this guy or this device from the network itself? So it's more of a holistic level of how we look at things, and which is why today we are talking about not just endpoint protection, right? How we integrate that with network security as well. Yeah.
Okay, I know that we're going to come back to that a bit later. And I want to basically go through with all the panelists first. So the second question is actually preventing the loss of sensitive data. Now, before we do that, today we have almost 60 attendees, 61 attendees joining us. Almost half senior executive, and I think it's about 20%, you know, in the early stage of their IT or IS career. I may have to ask Christine if you could kindly let us know, explain to us, what is threat detection and what should people look out for? How do you identify threat detection? Threat.
Hello?
Sorry, I have to throw so many questions at you at the moment.
That's fine. So threat detection is basically being able to identify cyber threats before it actually become a cyber attack or become a confirmed incident. And right now, it's actually very broad. There's a whole lot of ways to identify these threats. Like what they've mentioned earlier, EDR, there are a lot of technologies available. There's SIEM, there's EDR in place to help you continuously monitor and assess any potential risks. And there are also available threat intelligence platforms, which gives you an access to known threat already that's available everywhere. And even behavior analytics is already being incorporated to some of the security tools to help detect threats and analyzing the changes on the users, including machine learning and all those things.
Okay, typically in the Philippines market, what would consider a threat? You work with a lot of clients. I understand that you have to consult to them that these are the threat that you should be. These are the top priority threat. Okay, you have to focus on that kind of thing.
I think the most common threat would be in social engineering is phishing. It's actually the phishing attack. Sometimes we may think that it's very basic. They just send an email and the person clicks the link or whatnot, but it actually poses a lot of threat. That's why in one of our services, which is orchestration and automation, we usually prioritize the automating of their phishing so that there will be an automatic button to report the phishing, automatic checking against different sources, whether it really is a malicious attack, so that they can prevent it by automatic blocking of URLs or IP, blocking of the files, and automatic password reset for at least for the users who are affected.
Yeah, you're probably right. There's a lot of phishing campaign out there, i.e., a lot of cyber criminals are taking disadvantage of, because of COVID, a lot of people are experience some economic hardship in a way that you receive an email and say, oh, small loan, no interest loan, government helping loan and all that stuff. Click here to apply. And sorry, this I would apply too, but why not? That is where they get caught. Is that how it works? Now, how do we tell employee not to click on any of this link?
It's actually hard, but it really starts with basic security awareness. It all starts with security awareness. Everyone should be aware not to click those phishing emails. Okay,
you and me know that maybe 70% of the employee will comply, but a lot of them was like, I'll just click it, Our questions for, actually, this is not a question, this is more like a case study. There is, I think last time we spoke with CP as well. There is also internal threat as well, where an employee, and actually taking place in Philippines, okay, was so disgruntled, and he kept all this malicious thing he know because he's an IT person, that the day he left, he decided to click on all of them and then just turn it on. And he also basically sent it all to his colleague, okay? So that's that. Now, the questions for Francel. Francel, you work for the armed forces and you're responsible also look after the information security. So from your point of view, from a government point of view, and you actually quite a strong authority, how do you identify the threat and how do you analyze it?
Well, basically, identifying threats is basically just knowing which are suspicious or malicious processes that comes in our system. Yep. So yep, I'll just hide my video so I have more data to.
Go ahead. Yes. Please do.
Yeah. So basically, as I was saying, those are unrecognized processes that that are considered as threat. So how do we mitigate it? We actually have our CERT, our computer emergency response team, and they are the ones who actually work and react on these threats on the immediately. So we have policies in place, we have SOPs, and being in the military setting in the defense, I can't actually divulge the actual software we use, but in a nutshell, team is the one that actually reacts on any kind of threat, any threat that we identify on our networks.
Okay. Now, this question come back to Christine. Sorry, I still have to continue come back to you, Christine, because we're still on the threat detection. I understand that you also help clients respond to some of this threat as well. And are there any particular incidents that there are threat that you're thinking that, okay, we are in too deep now. What are we going to do?
Honestly, I haven't had any clients wherein they're into deep because what we're doing is at least help them improve their incident response management on how they respond and how they contain the incidents beforehand. But I guess for those, if ever a client does have that, like what Fran mentioned, it's important that each organization should be prepared, that each organization should have at least an incident response plan on how they can contain and respond to an incident.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a attendee that just posted a question here, which I think is very interesting. Johnny Caballero was saying, how about shifting to zero trust mindset? Now, this one I have to basically go to CP. We talk about zero trust. Although the strategy is very sound or anything like that, to implement zero trust, there is a lot of difficulty. CP, can you walk us through?
Yeah, okay. So basically, well, zero trust, it's one of the ideas, right, for security itself. Maybe in layman terms, you just call it, guilty until proven innocent, right? So we don't trust anyone. But when we allow a device or a user to enter the network itself, how are we going to prove that you are who you are and you are what you are, the device itself? So there are many technologies out there. I outlined a little bit just now, right? We talked about, hey, you need to authenticate yourself. Single password is not enough. Many organizations on their own, or even from a regulatory point of view, they've implemented multi-factor authentication. So in terms of what you know and what you have, right, in tokens. I mentioned at the beginning of today's session about security posture check. So the continuous thing about, yeah, you are who you are, but is your device what it's supposed to be? That kind of checks also has to be put in place. And once we've established this, who, what, where, when, that kind of rules, then you can say, hey, you are then allowed to access and only to that particular part of the network that you've been authorized. Yeah. So.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the attendee, I do encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. Although I'm the host here, I'm supposed with all sorts of questions, but your participation, your interest is highly valuable. So again, all of you guys, most of you are head of IT, CIO, CISO. I hope that. So I just put it out there. So people questions like what Johnny just did. Okay, we come back to zero trust. Charmaine, we talked about zero trust many months ago. how do you implement zero trust in your organization? You're on mute at the moment. It's okay, I can unmute you if you like.
Okay, all right. Zero trust, that's the big buzzword today, right? Everything is zero trust. And CP was exactly correct. How do we implement such a thing? It is that's basically your goal. Be able to whitelist everything. I whitelist the person, the endpoint, and the transmission, and the need to know, right? Least privilege, and of course with the proper authentication. And that's your zero trust network. Can you do that immediately? The answer is no. Because if you have a green field, for example, you're opening up a business fresh, you can definitely be successful in implementing zero trust. But that's not how our organizations are built. They're built with some systems, some that are legacy, some that are within today. In most cases, most organizations have just completed upgrading certain systems. And so how do you implement zero trust in that type of environment? So you have to be cognizant of how you're going to strategically implement this methodology. So you're either going to say, let's work on the users first, then the second is the endpoint, or vice versa. But it's looking at your enterprise architecture and your strategy, and ensuring that you look at it holistically, so that you can develop a strategy that has phases, so to speak. And those phases are accepted by the business, because those are your clients. And they need to understand how you want to move and get them to that, I guess, security posture or organizational readiness.
Okay. I really like this question. It's a good question. A lot of questions flying in. So I'm going to dump the question out. Go through all the attendee questions. Let's just basically, Johnny is asking an additional question to Christine and Lieutenant Colonel. Having a documented cert is one, but having a network threat monitor tool is something that's hit by an actual attack. So, Johnny, is that a question or more like a comment? I'll come back to you later. What do you think, Christine, about this particular comment?
Sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing. I'm looking at the questions. You kind of broke up.
Please do look at the question.
Which one is it?
And so I'm going to go back in again because I think my internet has a bit of problem. So JR is going to take over some of the questions and answer, okay?
Probably I can answer one of the questions, I think, because I was the one who mentioned this. One of the panelists mentioned about security orchestration and automation. So how can we implement that solution in our environment? I think this is mainly one of the things we are focusing on in our services. It's really helping out the clients improve the overall incident management solutions in their company, whether it be automating manual tasks of their SOC analysts, because we know that there is a limitation, or there is a lack of cybersecurity professionals, not only here in the Philippines, but globally. So with security orchestration and automation, you can mitigate the mundane tasks for the SOC analysts. And then orchestration, what we do is we integrate all the different tools to work together, because right now there are a lot of available tools, but then we are not able to maximize it, because instead of the tools helping, the SOC analysts are busy looking at those tools. So what we do is we integrate everything so that we maximize its benefits and efficiency, and then they can just one example of automation is we ingest all of the information, all of the events, all of the logs, so that the SOC analyst can just focus on one single pane of glass for them to check what the malicious reports are, what the malicious logs are, and then from there they can do the prevention and respond to the incident.
Thank you for that, Christine. Ping, do you have anything to add regarding having a documented CSIRT in relation to having also a network threat monitoring tool? Sorry, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think what Christine has mentioned really strikes a tune there, because I guess security itself is not a single silver bullet. Right? We've got so many tools out there. Charmaine probably would have implemented, I would say, 100% almost, right, of the alphabet soup in security, cybersecurity itself. So it's about the integration is one big thing. It's not as easily said as done, but I guess that's the end state that we want everything to be. As we integrate them, end of the day, what we really want to achieve is to be able to automate some of those responses.
Yes.
It's to make it more productive, probably, and to proactively detect and respond to any threats quicker.
Thank you for that, CP. While I have you right now, CP, I think the next question would be most appropriately answered by yourself. I'll just read it out loud, since it's actually by an anonymous attendee. So since OAuth and MFA does not guarantee security as it is now being used by hackers nowadays, what would you suggest would be the authentication mechanism on identifying users, specifically those using their personal device in accessing company systems?
Yes, actually, you're right. That's a good question. So what I've seen companies doing when they do this is really to have multiple layers of authentication. Even if MFA, right, is talking about multiple tokens, so to speak. The other thing that we could do is, because if you're using soft tokens, typically they will be installed on your mobile phone itself, right? Then can that software itself make use of the built-in biometric capabilities, integrate that in, right? So you don't authenticate until you authenticate yourself through that biometrics. That could be another way.
Okay, sorry, I have to jump back in here because I have to change my internet into a landline. So I think that's probably better now. Charmaine, John is asking, just now you talk about security, orchestration, and automation. How can we implement that solution in our environment?
I think the question was for Christine, for security automation.
Sorry, yeah. Christine.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, your question was how do we implement security orchestration and automation?
Yeah, security orchestration and automation. How can we implement that solution in our environment?
It actually depends. We start with understanding the current state of the companies, or understanding the current maturity of the client, because it depends. Most of the clients doesn't have that level of maturity. They don't have processes in place. So it really depends, but mostly we start with improving or creating incident response playbooks for them. And then from there on, and then we understand which are their pain points. So like what I mentioned earlier, do they need a threat intelligence playbook? Do they need a phishing playbook? Because those are the priorities. Then we start with that. And then we design, or we help develop the workflow playbooks for them. And then from there, we develop the automation and the integration to different tools.
Okay. John, you saying that, this has been answered. I hope that, we cover the second time. Sorry, I'm being a bit long-winded here. Now, Chin-Ping, we actually touched base on this particular topic a few months back, and I understand that, security automation is something that you help a lot of organizations to put together. So with environment like that, especially in the Philippine market where they all have to work from home, they can't go back to the office. How can they implement that when working with you or working with all the panelists here?
Yeah, I think I fully agree with what Christine mentioned just now, right? About putting together your processes and your playbooks. Because at the end of the day, what technology is able to do is to facilitate your processes and to drive it. Because why do I say that? Because people are the ones who are driving the processes, right? So technology basically just helps you to automate things and make sure that people do not deviate from what you have formulated within those playbooks. So having said that, with adoption of technology, like what I'm going to offer you guys later, right? In terms of endpoints and network integration, that could be one way. So let's say I start with baseline, how we're going to react to a certain event or incident. Then we want to implement it, we want to automate it. Then we look at what are the technologies that is available to do that. If the technology offers you a different way to run things and it makes it better, then yeah, you can adopt that as part of your response plan. So I would say it's very much a live iteration and reiteration. It's never going to be dead. So it's continuous process improvement, if you will. Right?
Okay. Let's just address the last question that we have from the attendee. This is all about homograph. So Michael was asking, some attacker uses the recipient email address, making it look like you sent it yourself. And we've seen that, using different character like PayPal, their A is different A, etc. and that sort of thing to make it, they sent it. How can Zero Trust address this? You're on mute at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think Zero Trust addresses that problem per se. It's more with, was it Christine who started with talking about email security, phishing and all that, right? So it's, again, it's many different technologies coming together to achieve that. What you've mentioned just now, I think one of the terms we use is cousin domains, right? So for example, it's a Fortinet.com. Instead of FOR, it becomes a F0R, for instance. So you've got to have, I would say, besides the user himself educating them, but it's again a never-ending education, right? Then we've got to make use of technology that's able to catch this kind of little subtle differences. Right?
Okay.
So it's a combination of both.
Do we still have Francel online? Because I can't see her now. Maybe she dropped off. Charmaine, I'm going to come to you for this particular question. So, I know you manage a team, and how do you basically train and ensure that they recognize this particular issue, the fake email kind of thing issue?
Okay, one of the things that we do have, we realize that we are in fact a small team. So we do have our partnerships with our managed security service provider, and they are basically our threat intelligence feeds now. That, and also it's also advisable, I do recommend it, is to ensure that you also provide a service or look into what we call a brand watch, right? So these are threat hunting services or threat intelligence capabilities. incorporate it in your operations center so they are able to feed you that information, number one. Because yes, you only have a team of maybe 4 or 6. They cannot function to do everything for you. So you have to understand who your partners are going to be. And it could very well be what Christine was talking about in terms of having the SOAR for you, the orchestration, along with your operations. So those are that is how we that is what I would advise is to get into partnerships with those organizations that will allow you that feed, because you don't have that time to basically do the intelligence work. You need to get that help and that assistance, and that's their forte, so to speak.
Okay. I think I have to address Jan Alfred's questions here. Is that okay still to use open source tool in security monitoring like CACD, etc.? Who would like to take that? Because I'm not so sure. I think CP, do you want to take that, or Christine?
Okay, I couldn't read that question. So it's about open source
So Jan
adoption.
Is that okay to use open source tool like in security monitoring like CATI? I'm not familiar with the term CATI.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's more of the tools are just tools, right? In my opinion, whether an organization decides to adopt open source or off the shelf, it's really a matter of policy. Why do I say that? I've worked for a company that's we started off, we wanted to do open source, and end of the day, you need people to maintain it, and you're going to be on your own as far as security, code hardening, and all that is concerned. So operationally, then your workforce would have to be ready to support that. So it may mean you need more people. Versus if you were to go for off-the-shelf software, then certain things you can rely on a vendor to provide you. They would probably have regular certs out to you, if any vulnerabilities get it patched and whatnot. Yeah. So there's no yes or no answer, in my opinion. It's how you're going to organize your business or your IT structure.
Great. Christine, do you want to comment on that? Or you straight up tell your client, do not use any of that. Only use proprietary.
Not really. Yeah, I agree with CP.
Okay. We have a lot of questions coming in. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in the questions round. Feel free to basically ask as many as possible. We'll try to answer all of it and stuff. Now, an attendee is asking, okay? So, Francis, I just dropped, I lost you just now a little bit. And I noticed that you're back. Welcome back. So the question is here, what tool would you recommend to mitigate DNS hijacking? This I'm gonna basically go to Charmaine. Charmaine, you talked about this before as well. We have this conversation too, last year, I think.
Okay, there are myriad. It's been quite a long time since we did the technology speak in terms of DNS now, in terms of the tool, and I'd have to kind of look at what we've got, I don't recommend a specific tool, or rather I stay away from saying use this tool, it's much better than that. But understanding how you're going to incorporate that alongside your other systems. CP was talking about that earlier. You can have a myriad of tools, and the more tools you have, they're going to monitor these things. And the question is, who is going to monitor these things? Is it a service provider? Do they understand the tools that you already have in place, plus what they're bringing in? So I would say for us, it's actually a service provision now, right? Because for the process, it's much better, again, to create those partnerships around. But in terms of me recommending a specific tool, I try to stay away from.
All right, I don't want to put you on a spot, but sorry, most of you may not understand the background because me and Sharon will talk about these technology things a lot last year. So that's why I asked to comment on that. But CP, I do want to ask you to comment on that. Any particular tools that you recommend to mitigate DNS hijacking?
No, actually, I do not really my domain of expertise, I would say.
Okay, no problem. So we're going to move on to that. I will try to basically find any tools that I think you can use, and I'm going to try to sell it to you, okay? I'm joking. Johnny is also asking, can you employ email caution to all incoming email? So employee can be alerted and the email is coming from external. That is just example how employee zero trust, he was just basically saying that, But CP, we are going to cover that later, when incoming email, malicious link or anything like that, that's what the endpoint security prevention is for, really. Do you want to comment on that? Can we basically block email?
Actually, not really. To answer, was that Johnny's question, was it? Yeah. That's of course one way that we can do things. Let me just close the.
Actually, his one is not really a question. It's more like a comment. So you can employ email caution to all incoming email. I believe that there are IT security professionals out there that scan all the email and blocking and all that and stuff. They don't really trust. I mean, that's basically zero trust.
Yeah. In fact, I think many of us have received emails from external. I've seen, right? Let's say I were to send you, Jeff, an email and then you reply back. And when I scroll down to my original email, it says that, oh, this is from external. So if you're going to do that from a human point of view, right? If every email that comes in has that message, I think after some time it gets immune, I would say. So end of the day, it is still very much a human thing. That's why we have services that Christine talks about, right? Phishing services that allow users, the employees to get used to this kind of thing and understand. Even within Fortinet, we get that, every few months we get phishing emails, tests on us. And it's getting used to understanding that emails are one of the largest attack surface, and it's very successful for the criminals, and we to be always on our toes.
Okay.
The human needs to play a part.
Yes, well, I think I would say that if you look at the threat intelligence feeds, from our SOCs and our partner services are saying, they've gone away from getting into your systems or your network through the normal means, pinging, going through your network. They're really going on the soft targets, social media and email. And that's where you need to make sure that you have the protection, the technology for protection, of course. And we need to update that, by the way. You may have bought a gateway, an email gateway a year or two ago, and you may want to revisit because those controls may not be sufficient. We may need to look at and check it out and ensure that it's still sufficient to your environment today because of the increased number and complexity of phishing emails we're receiving.
Okay. Now we have to move on from our second, because we're still basically within the second parameter of our questions. It's I feel that Francel, are you still there? Because I
think she was
you dropping and coming on the. Okay, let's just basically go to the last thing that I really want to do. Look, we can prevent a lot of things, but we also, as an IT security professional, we also have to react to some of the things like how are we going to react when things happen. So what can we do? Okay, this is more question for Charmaine and Christine. What can we do when worst case happen? Okay, when someone or something has slipped past our defense system, our preventive technology, and that's become a threat. What is the action that we have to take?
All right. We'll start with basics. You're going to want to manage the incident. Right? Yep. There's a life cycle to an incident. You're going to want to contain it immediately. Behind that process, Christine talked about having those playbooks with your SOR, your SOAR, the playbooks that says if we get hacked, if we get a data breach, if somebody gets phished, or we have a ransomware. There's at least 10 different playbooks or 10 basic playbooks, and we need to practice those things and make sure we keep them updated and we test and actually test it. Oftentimes, most are written and forgotten. They write it and they put it on a shelf, and then they forgot, oh, it's the next year. We're going to have to update the plan again. My recommendation is we need to pull those, continually look at them, because at any time, at any day, it will happen. And you're going to want to pull that plan out and follow it, right? So those are things that I would recommend.
Christine?
Yeah, Charmaine pretty much covered everything.
Sorry.
Just to add on that, other services that we do offer for cybersecurity is that we also help the CSIR teams or your SOC teams to practice the SOPs that they have in place, because they won't be able to know what to do unless it's already there. So we also help do tabletop exercises, for example, for them to really help prepare and really understand what they need to do on how they respond to an incident.
That's right.
Okay. We have a question from Sherwin. I'm not so sure I want to answer that, but I'm going to read it anyway. He said, hello, I'm Sherwin from PetNet. Do you think in China and Russia will be aggressive in attacking and sponsor attack? I don't know how to answer that. I think this is basically, I'm going to avoid this question, okay?
However, a bit political, but on the side, I do teach cyber warfare in college. So we talk about this quite a bit, but I would invite you to look at the MITRE page and the attack, and majority of our security providers, where they really look at all the attacks, the espionage, the espionage attacks coming from different countries. I won't say what and where, because those are very sensitive. But if you look at that, it'll show you exactly some historical feeds there. The rise and fall of certain companies or organizations because of cyber attacks and advanced persistent threats. That would definitely give you an inclination of where it's headed. Again, we don't want to go into who's who and what's going on, but will it be aggressive per se? Could be. But check the MITRE site and check out some of our security provider sites, and they do provide some information that will give you that as well.
Panelists, fellow panelists, very often when I do interactive webinar like that, I would invite some of our attendees to join our panel. And in this particular instances, I have invited Johnny Cabarro, which actually just now, throughout our conversation, he had contributed a lot of insight on zero trust and everything. Johnny, if you can unmute your mic and say hello to all the panelists, that would be great. I'd like you to basically contribute some of your insight as well to what we just talked about. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Johnny,
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Perfectly. You were mentioned a lot on zero trust, etc., and that sort of thing. So before we move on to our regulatory compliance segment later, which we already kind of run out of time, can you just walk us through quickly? Because I know you're a CISO for a large financial services company. So how do you implement zero trust, and what do you do to basically identify threat?
Well, we started the idea of zero trust because of this pandemic. Everyone is actually using mobility. We provided mobile devices to all employees, so not to exceed the requirements of the law of putting all employees on site. So, for example, if you implemented site restriction in head office or in your LAN, suddenly when these employees went to their houses and using their own Wi-Fi, then suddenly they can visit all sites. No? Then the following day, they will come into the office again and connect to your head office LAN, and they are now bringing in links, malicious links, malwares coming from their own internet connection to their houses. So these are just small controls that you can employ on top of your layered security. I'm pretty sure everyone has layered security, but these are non-technology driven configurations that you can employ and apply to all devices, whether it is in your head office or in your houses. So that is just one of the controls that we employ when we shifted from traditional work on site to mobility, so that we can address the issue about this social distancing and physical distancing.
Okay. Johnny, thank you so much. I know that you have a lot of knowledge, and sorry that I caught you off guard. I do that sometimes because I want to make this interesting as such.
No, just one, because you discuss about how can you attend to, for example, if you were hit by an actual attack. So,
yeah.
Well, activation C-cert is just one, but having putting yourself inside that situation, you really need to activate a lot of procedures, not only C-cert, because C-cert is just maintaining your controlled environment, putting back into normal situation. But on top of putting back to normal, you also need to activate your PR manual so that you can be ready to communicate with external stakeholders. You have to activate your legal team so you can go after this culprit. You have to activate probably your DRP, because probably you want to ship from your production environment to DR sites. You can clean your own your head office. So there are lots of procedures and plans, not only CSERT.
Okay.
That is just my input to everyone.
Any comment on Johnny insight just now? CP, Charmaine?
I think for the most part, when we speak of incident management and incident response capability, I do agree with what John had talked about, right? It's not just a CSERT or an IT response, it's an organizational response. And when you do that, you activate the organization or the business's incident management process, which tech is only a part of. So you do that holistically.
Okay. Look, I do want to basically talk a bit on regulatory compliance, especially on the data privacy and how do we basically prevent loss of data. However, we do basically already run this about 60 minutes. I'm going to ask the attendee. I just need another 10 minutes to go through the data privacy. If you'd like to stay on, just basically put on a time message, say, let's stay on for another 10 minutes, and we're going to basically go through that. Okay? If I don't have any rejection, I'm just going to go. Sorry, I'm just going to bulldoze here. CP, you work with a lot of clients, a lot of in Manila or Philippines, in particularly, is where they all worry about data privacy, and that's the reason why they want to make sure that their endpoint is secure. And Christine, I understand that you work with clients to ensure that they detect threat very quickly to make sure that their data are protected. So, if that, bear in mind that if we are on the objective of protecting our data and look at the data privacy in Philippines, what can we do to make sure that data are not lost, and how do we basically protect endpoint, in fact protect our data? I know there's a long thing, but Because last time we talked about we can't protect everything. So we have to basically protect our crown jewel. And how do we do that?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, maybe just let me start off with saying we talked about quite a bit of things today, zero trust,
yeah,
authentication and all that. So your point on crown jewels is key as well, right? I mean, I think just now Charmaine also mentioned that, hey,
hello,
I
CP,
think,
did I lose you? All right, I'm gonna wait for CP to come back. Charmaine, do you want to comment on that?
okay. All right. So we were talking about how do you, once again, I was waiting for CP. Did you say that question one more time?
Yeah, we can't protect everything. We can only protect things that we deem to want to protect because there's a lot of information out there in the organization. And we also have to be aware of data privacy rules as well. So what can we do?
Well, yes, we did say we're going to ensure that we know what are the crown jewels, what are the data that we need to protect. Along with access and along with understanding compliance and endpoint in the system being able to access in the network, comes with the what we call data leakage prevention or data loss protection. And that's a type of technology that you're going to need now as well as the organization starts to build data lakes, data marts, data stores. So the more data is captured and stored and used, we need to be able to have a system to be able to sift through that and identify based on that classification of the data. So two things are going to happen. Yeah, you get the tool that allows you to be able to parse through the data that says, okay, all secure or classified data will be in this bucket and we'll secure it this way. All that are classified, that are not necessarily classified or are public, that's okay. We'll leave it in this bucket. So we can get the tool that allows you to do that. That's good. But we also need to have the hygiene in the process that will be able to deal with that. Because you have to make sure that it's ready to be able for the tool to implement and capture for you, right? And there are many different variations to install DLP or data loss protection. You can get it from an endpoint or the network or user base. So again, knowing your enterprise architecture, how you're moving data around and what it looks like and where it's going, you'll be able to find how you're going to implement it. Because again, it's going to be a variety. It's not a one-stop shop where I will build it in this way. This is my model. We have to understand how the business is moving and how they're ingesting data or using data as well.
Okay. Now, since I have Lieutenant Colonel Francis online, I'm just going to capture this moment very quickly. Francis, can you walk us through how does your team or the armed forces protect their crown jewel data? If you can hear me, you're on mute at the moment. Francis? Okay, with the essence of time, we are going to go to the next segment, but I think we have covered some of the important things that Charmaine just wanted to cover. Oops.
Yeah, I think it may be a connection.
It's very strange today. Okay. CP, well, we basically, can we, like I say, very early on, we will talk about the whole objective for this particular webinar is to educate. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we help organizations prevent attack by implementing tools or a modem so that, even though our employee click on malicious link, we can still protect them. Can you walk us through how Fortinet can help? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can. So I was waiting for Colonel. Okay, so what I can do is this. I think as part of this whole webinar, we were talking about offering our audience here a promotion package, a bundle to handle some of these issues. So maybe just let me share it. Okay, I gotta have access.
Go ahead.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah, I hope you can see my screen here.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so obviously we've talked about so many things today. There are many things that we need to do or we can do, but so I'm just going to offer two solutions in a way. We talked about protecting endpoints, multi-factor authentication, 2FA in this sense. So let's start with the basics, right? We talked about wanting to give our users, the end users, access from wherever they are. I mean, today the situation is people are working from home. I would very much expect that when we normalize, we are still going to work from somewhere outside the office, very much, right? So this is a hygiene factor to me, enabling secure remote access with encrypted connection as a VPN, minimally two-factor authentication. And the other thing that we would like to do is also, to be able to protect endpoints. We are talking about, when you're in the office behind your perimeter, you're on net, you're safe, but we should be able to give these endpoints the equal security, if you will, whether they're on or off net. So having a VPN client is one thing, but we're going to have the operational aspects come in, right? Are you going to have a VPN client and then another endpoint protection and yada, yada, yada? Right? So if we're able to at least integrate all this into a single package, you say that, hey, you're going to have a VPN client integrated with endpoint protection, things like giving you visibility, telemetry. I think Johnny was saying, right, we want to know what the people are using, what the people are doing with their endpoints, be it in the office or at home. You want to have that visibility, protect against malware, be it signature-based or sandboxing-based, web filtering, and even vulnerability scanning of your devices itself. And so with that, the first bundle takes care of this, providing a VPN gateway, that's the FortiGate itself, and then bundling it with user licenses for two-factor authentication and also for endpoint protection. Those functions and features and functionalities that I was talking about in the previous slide. And the next one is really about endpoint and Office 365 protection bundle. It's very apt. This is the first time I'm talking to Johnny, but I think he brought up things like email security, and then we are talking about protecting corporate data. And so this thing comes in very aptly, protecting the endpoints on both on and off net. It's basically the same as the first bundle, but we also understand that many organizations are moving to Office 365, E135 or what have you, right? And I would say that two of the largest functions besides the usual productivity tools is on Office 365 is email and file sharing, right? So email, we know we've discussed quite a bit about it being a #1 attack surface and really have many successful breaches. So how do we protect against that? Even when I think Shamin was mentioning about the email gateway, but that basically protects us from external to internal. What about internal to internal, right? Today, I think many of us have email clients on the mobile phones, right? you can receive it from Gmail, for example, and then I can forward it out using my office email account, right? So, and to somebody, my colleague here. So it can be a phishing email, it can be a malicious email, but typically when it's internal to internal, we don't really scan, right? So do we have a solution to handle this kind of attacks? My quick answer is yes. It's in the Office 365 email security bundle that includes an API, right, to Office 365 itself. So that's one thing. The other thing is obviously file sharing. It's a great tool, OneDrive, SharePoint, right? But do we know what's being shared and with who? That kind of information. And this next two bundles basically handles that, giving you endpoint security together with email security, and even giving you visibility and security down to your file sharing, right? OneDrive or SharePoint. Okay, and one last one. If you are keen on this offer, do scan this URL here, this QR code, and it will bring you to our website, right, for you to enjoy that offer. Thanks.
CP, I understand that you promised me. I know that we have about 70 plus people join today. They can also forward this to all their IT peers and colleagues. They can still get the same promotion. Am I correct?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
But promise is a promise.
All right. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. I know that I took a bit of more time than I actually promised it. Thank you for coming on board. In particular, today I also have to apologize. Some of our internet are not that great today. So if we drop off, we come back and deliver the information as quickly as we wanted. I apologize for that. But overall, we have covered a lot of issues and stuff. Christine, thank you for your sharing on threat detection. Charmaine just had to log off, and also I'd like to hear thank you, Charmaine, as well. And last but not least, unfortunately, I can't get Francel back, but I'd like to thank Francel as well. But again, thank you, CP or Chin-Peng, and you and your team from the Fortinet very graciously offer this particular promotion bundle to all Philippines IT professional. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask CP. CP, if you want to put your email there or any email that they can read, that would be great, especially in the Philippines market.
Yeah.
JR, can you do that in Tagalog so that we close this with a bit of respect?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. So salamat sa pag-login or pagsama sa amin sa webinar today. From the list, actually, nakaka-recognize ako ng mga dating partner namin sa Fortinet Philippines. So hi lang kay Louie, hi kay Jessica. Thanks sa pag-join. Hope you enjoyed the session. Then again, thank you, Jerome. Nag-iwan ng email si CP. So it's cpwong@fortinet.com. Wong Ching-Ping is his full name. So pag may mga tanong kayo, please feel free to reach out, and any inquiries, just let us know. Thank you so much. So ulitin ulit. Salamat.
Thank you. I think Chin-Ping is trying to type in. You can find him on LinkedIn, Wong Chin-Ping.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the attendees. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.